Have you ever looked at your partner and felt a wave of anger wash over you? Not because of something they did, but because of something they didn't do? This feeling often surfaces over small, trivial things: an unmade bed, a delayed response, a failure to notice your new haircut. But the resentment is monumental. This is not a failure of love. This is a failure of communication, driven by unspoken expectations. They're the silent killer in modern relationships. We are entering the story of Mark and Sarah, a story of two people who love each other deeply, but are systematically destroying their intimacy with silence. Let's look at a Tuesday morning, the perfect illustration of how the iceberg is formed. Sarah wakes up and sees two coffee mugs from the previous night still in the sink. She knows Mark left them. She immediately feels a familiar, tight knot in her stomach. Sarah's inner voice: "I'm up at 6 a.m., preparing his breakfast, organizing the kids, and yet he can't walk his own mug 3 feet to the dishwasher? I shouldn't have to ask. If he respected my time, he would just do it." She cleans them with aggressive energy. She says nothing. This act of resentment, the small piece of pain she swallows, is logged in her mental tally book. Mark arrives home exhausted from a high-pressure meeting. He immediately retreats to the couch for a much-needed 15 minutes of decompression. He senses the chill in the air when Sarah says fine to his "How was your day?" He saw her loading the dishwasher that morning, but he honestly didn't register the mugs. Mark's inner voice: "What did I do now?" She's clearly upset. "If I ask, it will turn into a half-hour fight about my mugs from last night. I'm too tired for that. I'll just be quiet and let it blow over." He retreats further into his phone, attempting to minimize his presence. This is the toxic dance. She pulls away to punish him for not reading her mind. He pulls away to avoid the punishment. The distance grows, powered entirely by things that were never said. Let's analyze the psychology behind Mark's reaction. What Sarah interprets as apathy is actually a complex defense mechanism rooted in his self-worth. Mark views love as a transaction of provision and peace. His core belief is, "I work hard to provide security. My reward should be domestic peace and freedom from micromanagement." When Sarah gets passively aggressive, he doesn't see a cry for help. He sees a threat to his peace. This reaction is known as emotional withdrawal. He views emotions as a loss of control, a concept often ingrained from childhood where strong figures fixed problems while others complained. He believes that to maintain status and strength, he must avoid emotional confrontation. He sacrifices intimacy for the illusion of control. He fears that if he addresses the mug, the real conversation will be about his fundamental inadequacy as a partner. His silence is not indifference, it is a shield. He hopes his invisibility will make the problem and her pain disappear. But in reality, his withdrawal only confirms Sarah's deepest fear, that he doesn't care enough to try. Now, we cross the divide to Sarah's world. Her pain is not about two ceramic mugs. It's about the significance they represent. Sarah carries the weight of emotional labor. This invisible workload includes remembering birthdays, scheduling appointments, planning meals, and managing the emotional temperature of the household. When Mark leaves the mugs, he is not just leaving a dish. He is signaling that the emotional labor of noticing, remembering, and cleaning is solely her responsibility. Her key belief is what psychologists call magical thinking. If he truly loved and respected my mental load, he would know how tired I am and take the initiative. The subconscious demand that love grants psychic powers. When she is forced to ask for help, it destroys the meaning. If she has to say, "Please wash your mug," the act is transformed into a chore done under duress, not a voluntary act of partnership. This difference fuels her deepest resentment. Her expectation is that love should eliminate the need for negotiation. Her anger builds because she feels that she is being punished for holding the entire emotional structure of their life together. The unspoken expectation here is, if I were a good enough partner, he would see me struggle. This tragic cycle is built on a lack of mutual respect for each other's internal reality. They're not fighting the mugs, they're fighting different visions of what a partnership should be. Psychologists call the outcome the iceberg of resentment. The small fight is the 10% visible above the water. The 90% beneath the surface is all the time she wanted help but didn't ask, and all the times he felt unjustly judged but didn't defend himself. This cycle is driven by 3 toxic assumptions. The psychic assumption, you should just know what I need. The martyr assumption, I will suffer in silence until I burst, which proves I am the better partner. The failure assumption, if I have to ask, it means I have failed and our love is flawed. The relationship cannot evolve while these unspoken contracts are active. The distance will grow until the love is starved of air. The turning point for Mark and Sarah came not with a screaming match, but with a moment of exhausted clarity. Sarah finally said, "Mark, I'm tired of being mad about things I never told you about." Mark, realizing the conversation wasn't an attack, was finally ready to move past his fear. Their solution wasn't about perfectly clean dishes. It was about rewriting the rules of engagement. They found that explicit love is the only kind that survives. They introduced a set of powerful tools to dismantle the resentment. The tools of explicit love. The 60-second reentry protocol. Mark committed that when he walks through the door, he stops everything for 60 seconds, makes full eye contact, and asks, "I am home. Tell me one thing I can do for you right now." This preemptively addresses Sarah's need for presence and initiative. They ask her drop vow. Sarah committed that if a task bothers her, she has 2 options. Option A, ask calmly. She states the request clearly, using I feel statements. I feel overwhelmed when the sink is full. Can you please handle the dishes now? Option B, drop it. If she chooses not to ask, she must consciously and completely drop the resentment connected to that incident. No silent tallying. 3, the expectation audit. They sat down and each listed 5 major unspoken expectations they held about their partner. They converted the reasonable ones into explicit agreements and threw the unrealistic ones away. They focused on shared goals, not rigid roles. For the why, not just the what, Mark learned to ask, "Why is this specific task important to you?" Sarah learned to answer, "It's important because it makes me feel respected, not because I think you are lazy." This process requires radical empathy. They had to pause and ask themselves, if I were my partner, why would this be hard? Mark had to acknowledge that asking is an emotional risk for Sarah. Sarah had to acknowledge that Mark's discomfort with big emotions is a learned defense, not a chosen weapon. The bridge they built wasn't just made of new rules, it was made of shared vulnerability. They learned that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but the foundation of trust. They started seeing the request not as a nag, but as a map to their partner's heart. The silent killer in your relationship is not a lack of love. It is the dangerous assumption that love should be silent. Universal truth. Unspoken expectations are nothing more than premeditated resentments. When you assume you are setting your partner up for a test they don't even know they're taking, and you are guaranteeing your own disappointment. The deepest intimacy is built not in the silence, but in the conversation. It is built when you give your partner the study guide, not the pop quiz. Question for reflection. What is one unspoken expectation you hold about your partner that you're finally ready to either communicate clearly or consciously let go of this week? Write your commitment in the comments below. Let's start transforming silence into strength. Subscribe to StoryDose for your next dose of truth.